Hello YouTube, this is Carrie, and welcome to day 4 of my 30-day trans challenge. So, yesterday's video was very non-serious, and I like joking around with it, because honestly the issue of outing isn't something that I really deal with, so I got an opportunity to just be silly with it. Today's video, on the other hand, is going to be very long, very personal, and very, very serious. Today's question is, how did your family take it when you came out? Now, I've already done a video on this, so, here, if you want to see my preliminary video on why family support is important and get the basic gist of my story with my parents, then it's there. I will summarize it right now. Basically, my mom is my #1 fan. She immediately accepted me and is totally fine with absolutely everything. She says she could notice it almost as soon as I could talk. And so she was completely non-surprised and has done everything that she could to be accepting, and she's gone out of her way to be there for me, and she is actually coming with me to Thailand. When I told her that I was going to get SRS there, she said, "I'm coming with you." No, I don't care what you say. I am coming with you. I am not letting you go alone. I'm coming with you. So yeah, mom, #1 fan. Dad, it's complicated. And he still cares for me. I always see him showing concern for me and wanting everything to be okay. When I visited him last fall, he went out of his way to make sure that, nobody was going to be mean to me, which I am very happy about. But on the other hand, he doesn't really talk to me that much. And just about a week ago, I got a message by proxy from our mutual friend Barb, who he had said, basically, "Will you talk to Carrie about this?" I don't know why he didn't ask me himself. It's complicated. So that is the gist of my family situation. Mom super accepting, dad still kind of in denial, still trying to convince me that I'm not trans and that there's some other way that I can look at it so that I don't need SRS. Still kind of clinging to his ideal version of me because I know he wants grandkids and still wants me to live up to his ideal expectations of me. But since I've already talked about that, tonight I'm going to do something special to get into very, very deep depth on this. Basically, I've been keeping a journal all through transition. At the beginning, when I was considering starting hormones, and for the first probably year and a half, I journaled every single day. And because I was trying to track my own emotions, I wanted to make sure that I still felt good about this every single day. And, also I wanted to be able to look back and remember things. So I have the exact wording of the journal entries that I wrote when I came out to my parents. And tonight I'm going to read those for you to talk about this topic of what it was like to come out to my parents. Again, this is going to be very, very personal, very long, but hopefully it will be worth it because I don't think you could possibly get a deeper look at the emotions that one person, me, went through coming out to my parents, what I was afraid of and what actually happened. So, sit back. This is going to take a while, but hopefully it'll be worth it. So basically, when I was starting transition, family rejection was one of my #1 concerns. I was so terrified of letting down my parents' expectations. I was so terrified that they would be unaccepting, and for so many years I fought against that. They would never accept me. I'd never be their daughter. I'd always just be their delinquent son that went off the deep end, and that was more than I could handle emotionally for years. And the main reason I didn't transition was because I was terrified of rejection from others. And I just couldn't stand the thought of other people seeing me as weird or as a freak. I really just wanted to be normal. And I assumed that it was impossible if I did transition, which, I just spent years hating myself, wishing that I could have been a cis girl and, just thinking that transition was impossible because I couldn't stand the possibility of letting down others' expectations. So this weighed very, very heavily on me. So here we go. Here is the journal entry that I wrote 3 days before I came out to my mom. This was after I had decided to do my hormone trial. Again, I started it as a trial. I knew I wanted to do it, but I figured, okay, well, I'll just try it and see if I feel better. And as soon as I felt it, it was like, oh my God, what have I been missing my whole life? So, here is what I wrote when I was thinking about coming out to my parents. This was in response to somebody who asked me, what are your parents going to think? You know, I'll be 100% honest. I really don't think either of my parents will really mind. Again, for years, it's just that I've been trapped in this good girl mindset where I'm so afraid of making others uncomfortable or causing others any kind of offense that it made me insist on keeping all of this locked up. But honestly, although I'm sure neither of them wants anything like this to happen, I do think that they both get over it. My dad is a child of the 1960s. He's very much a whatever makes you happy kind of dad. So as long as I'm happy in life and as long as I'm succeeding in work, he really doesn't mind. No, I don't think he'd really like it or necessarily understand, especially since I was living exclusively with my mom during my teen years, which is when this whole thing got started in the first place. So he pretty much had no idea that I was having gender issues as a teenager. But at the end of the day, he'd probably be fine with it. The only thing that I'd be a bit embarrassed about would be that I still like going to camp with him and playing volleyball, and if I really do start transitioning, it would probably get a little awkward. Obviously. My mom would definitely understand. She already kind of knows, because she was there while it was happening. She accidentally read my journal one day in high school while she was cleaning under my bed. And so she knows full well just how much complaining I did, and how much I hated my own gender in high school. At the time, being the coward of a human being that I am, when she confronted me about that journal and said, look, so if you really want to be a female, and me being too embarrassed to admit it, explained it away saying, no, I don't, I swear. I just like writing about it because I think it's erotic to think about. Years later, though, after I moved out for college and the two of us actually got closer because I wasn't filled with teenage angst anymore, I did openly admit that no, transsexualism was not just something that I wrote about for fun. It really was a real desire of mine at the time. So if I were to tell her that those thoughts were coming back stronger than ever, and make a big spiel about how I was only suppressing it due to religious concerns, and admit that I was tired of ignoring it for the sake of not offending people anymore, she would probably not be surprised in the least, because she was there when I was secretly shaving my arms and legs at night. She was there when mysterious genital-shaped wads of duct tape started appearing in the garbage. She was there when I wrote page-long rants in my journal every night about how much I hated being a guy. She was there when suddenly puberty hit me and I changed from a bright-eyed smart kid with very few problems and an honor roll student into a C and D student who was barely scraping by as soon as puberty started. So she'd probably understand almost immediately. No, she would definitely not be happy about it because she does want grandkids one day, and she does have very emotional reactions to everything where she tends to panic, so it'd definitely hurt a little bit, but she'd definitely understand. January 2nd, 2013. Telling my mom. This is officially how it went when I told my mom. Today was a very big day for me. I told my mom, and we had a very interesting conversation on the topic. It went absolutely 100% the way that I had predicted. She was asking me what was going on with my relationship with Jenny, and I told her that I was going through a bit of a confusing time. And then I proceeded to explain that I was feeling transsexual again recently. And I explained fully that I had been feeling that way ever since high school, but was too much of a coward to admit it at the time, and only hadn't mentioned it in a while because I was going through a fundamentalist Christian phase where I was trying to suppress it. I apologized for not telling her back in high school, because now I realize she would have understood and would have helped me, but I was a social coward at the time and was kind of in denial about it. And just like I predicted, Mom was not only 100% okay with it, promising me that she would support me in any way that she could, but it was such a non-issue to her that we were still able to relax and talk about other normal things all day and still enjoy our day at the beach as if I was still exactly the same person. So that was a really amazing thing, and it was such a relief to finally tell her after years of telling myself she'd never understand back in high school for no good reason. Then something interesting happened. We actually got to have a deep, lengthy conversation on the topic. I explained to her that I had never really felt right with male hormones in my body. That as soon as I started puberty, the body hair felt wrong, the voice change felt wrong, and I just never understood the behavior of my male peers at that age. Plus, my sex drive always felt off. It wasn't enjoyable to me, and I'd often go 2 weeks without doing anything, while it seemed like every other guy I knew was obsessed with it and doing it multiple times a day. And then she told me all about something that I had not really given serious thought to before. She told me that there are actual psychological studies where when a parent is under stress during pregnancy, it impacts the child's hormone levels. And while she was pregnant, her mother was dying of cancer. It was the worst few months of her life. And she noticed that I was different from other boys almost as soon as I could talk. I was more open, I was more expressive, I was more social. And she actually used to have conversations with her college friend Karen, who had a boy at exactly the same time that I was born. And while Karen was constantly complaining about how rambunctious Chad was, I was always a lot quieter. I enjoyed intricate play, I always had girls as best friends, I was very well behaved, and I didn't have the same wildness to me. And I noticed this now too, that I'm looking back. So she speculated that maybe because of the stress she had during pregnancy, I had never really had much testosterone. So once I finally hit puberty and had to experience it, I wasn't used to it, and it felt like a foreign invader to me or something. She had always wondered about this for years and years, even when I was a little kid before anything had happened that I knew that I might be trans. She'd talked to her friends about it for years, and she'd always wondered if there was something hormonally different from me because I was so different from all of her friends' sons. So if anything, this was just a validation of all the things that I felt gender-wise through my entire life. And they actually have some legitimate merit, and I'm not just inventing things out of nowhere to try and mentally prove my trans status to myself. Side note, I made absolutely sure to let her know that I'm not bitter or resentful. I'm glad that I went through life the way that I did because it taught me so much, so hopefully she won't blame herself. To be honest, that talk has a lot of, this is my fault in it, which I hope she wouldn't. And all day today after that conversation, I felt like I was on cloud 9. It feels like my true personality is being unleashed. I talked differently, I was more open, I felt much more social and courteous, I was cracking jokes and smiling all day, and honestly, I've never been so happy in my entire life. The sun looked brighter, the food tastes better, and colors seemed more vibrant. I just felt free to be me. How awesome is that? So yeah, telling Mom could not have gone better, you know. And now we get to telling Dad. It took me a bit longer. I told Mom. She was one of the first people that I told. My then girlfriend Jenny was the very first person. But Mom was one of the first people that I came out to. And then it took me about another month and a half to finally come out to Dad. And this was... I didn't want to tell Dad until after my trial was complete, because until that trial, I was not 100% sure that I was going to stay on hormones, and therefore I didn't know if it was worth coming out to Dad and telling him, because I knew he was going to have a few more problems accepting it than my mom did. But finally, on February 26th, I did tell him. So here is the journal entry that I wrote that day. So, I just finished talking with Dad, and I told him I think I might be transgender. And I proceeded to explain what I've been feeling, that it's been this way for years, and that this was one of the main reasons why I almost failed out of school. I didn't actually tell him that I was on HRT yet. I chickened out. And well, unfortunately, I have my first denial reaction. He tried to say, okay, I guess, whatever you feel like. But I could just tell from his tone of voice and how he really didn't want to talk about it that it really made him feel uncomfortable. And when I told him that I wasn't comfortable in the male role of my relationship with Jenny, how I spent the entire time wishing that I was her, he immediately jumped on it and said, well, it doesn't mean that you're trans. Different people want different things. And no matter how I tried to explain it to him, I could tell that he just wasn't accepting it and was not understanding. At one point, he said, I kind of wonder what your mother would think about this, in a joking manner. And yeah, I know it. He doesn't understand. He's always kind of had this perpetual disappointment thing going on with me, where he always had all of these things that he wanted me to do, and yet I've really been uncomfortable with. Things like when he wanted to play Connect the Dots with my chicken pox, or when it rained at one of the camps that we were at, and there was a big mud pit, and he was like, seriously? You don't want to play in the mud? Get all dirty? Isn't that fun? And I was like, ew. Plus sports, and there just always seems to be this sense with him of having these expectations for me. And although he doesn't admit it, I can tell that it disappoints him when I don't live up to them. And that he still just kind of has this idealized image in his head that probably is not going to change even when I start transitioning. It's tough. So yeah, I feel a bit sad tonight because Dad doesn't understand, and it's going to be a long, hard battle to, number one, convince him that yes, I really am serious about this. Number two, convince him that this is not just a phase, not just something that I'm doing on a whim, but that it really is my identity. Number three, really get him to accept that yes, this really is happening. And number four, which may or may not ever happen, get him to start seeing me as his daughter instead of his son. That one is going to be nigh impossible, because I know he has his own notions of who I am, and after tonight, it's blatantly obvious that transsexual is completely in conflict with it. Right now, we're still in the denial phase, where he's trying to convince me that I'm not trans. Everyone else has switched straight to acceptance. Mom, Uncle Joe, Aunt Patty, and I love them so much for it. But with Dad, we have a long way to go. I knew it would happen eventually. Telling Dad, Part 2. This happened 3 months later when I visited him in person for the first time after having that talk. Basically, I visited him at the volleyball camp that he's a member of, and we did sit down and have a talk. Part 2. May 30th, 2013. Dad today sat me down and had a talk with me about the whole gender thing. Basically admitting that he himself has had sexual fantasies of being a woman from time to time, and that sure, he always knew that I did too, but that doesn't mean that I should actually go through with it. And I explained to him that it goes deeper than that for me it isn't just a fantasy. It extends to the point where I'm actually physically uncomfortable in my own body, and have been ever since the age of 12. And well, I know he's kind of still in denial about it. He's still trying to explain it away. No matter how I try to explain to him why I am doing what I'm doing, he still responds with just trying to convince me that I'm not really transgender or give me an alternate explanation. He made sure that I was aware that my receding hairline would be an issue. Thanks a lot, Dad. Like I don't feel crappy enough about that on my own, and I'm not taking finasteride, dutasteride, and using Rogaine every single freaking day to get the damn stuff to grow back. Yeah, I was not happy about that. He said, you'll never be rid of your receded hairline. Basically, when he couldn't convince me to stop transition, he belittled my possibility, so not fun. Basically, he's trying to find a way to convince me to stop without actually saying it. And I know he will get over it eventually, but he's definitely still in the denial phase, and I do feel bad for this. I mean, we have a very good relationship. I do with both of my parents. And now suddenly I'm throwing this on them, and I'm sure they probably feel like they're losing the person that they raised. So yes, I do feel a bit bad about it. But at the same time, there's no way in hell that I'm ever going back to being a guy. I'm just now beginning to taste the very first fruits of what it's like to look in the mirror and actually like what I'm seeing. And now that I finally tasted it, after 14 years of wishing that I could, there is no way in hell that I'm ever going to be able to go back to my old miserable self. It's the hard truth. And that is where we'll stop. Now, 2 years later, actually it's 3 years later now, Mom is still my number one fan, still 100% accepting, and again, she's coming to Thailand with me next month. Dad still has not progressed beyond that denial phase where he is still trying to convince me that I'm not trans. You know, now he's telling me, well, maybe you should get a girlfriend first, and maybe you should have kids first. Again, he's still just clinging to this idealized image of the person that he wanted me to be, and unfortunately, I can't live up to. And again, there's no way in hell I can possibly go back. Like, the further on I get, the more I realize that before I was barely even living, honestly. You know, it's like, I don't even think about it because, you know, being me has just become so natural where, you know, all of a sudden it'll click in my mind and I'll realize, oh, wait, this used to be a problem. And then I realized, oh my God, I used to deal with that every single day. Ugh. So we still have a ways to go with Dad. And again, it's not because he doesn't care about me, and it's not because we don't have a good relationship, you know. Whenever I see him, he's completely still nice to me. It's not like he's a mean person, and it's not like he's trying to get bitter revenge or something. It's just, again, he's probably struggling a bit with, you know, seeing me for who I am instead of this idealized image of me, the perfect, you know, successful son that he was expecting. It is often very difficult with parents who are the same sex as your birth assigned sex. Because again, there's a bit more of an emotional investment in the kind of carrying on the family legacy thing. And again, I do feel bad about that, but there's pretty much nothing I can do about it. You know, I have to do what's going to make me happy and not what's going to make Dad happy. And genital dysphoria is still bothering me every single day, so it's something I have to do. Anyway, that was my story with how my family took it when I came out. God, that was a long video. Hopefully it answered the question thoroughly, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye.